Real Coaching, episode 7. That's where we are right
Indeed.
now.
Number seven.
Number 7, right?
Who would have
And this
thought?
was just an idea we had. And you know what? I'm proud of us for putting it into
We're
action.
still going, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We have,
Definitely.
in this situation, reduced the distance between intention and action.
Yeah.
So, for those of you who don't know, my name is Dr. Ayo Olatoye, my esteemed colleague.
I'm Dr. Lewis Thomas.
And we are your hosts today. We are coaches, and we're both medical doctors, and we love comics. And we are having conversations about the story arc, the hero's arc, if you will, of Tony Stark, going through the MCU, wherever you see Tony Stark, and talking about how he's gone from essentially self-centered um, person that you probably wouldn't want to be friends to the actual hero of the piece who self-sacrifice saved everybody. Say that 7 times fast. Self-sacrifice. So yeah, so um I mean we are a little early, so why don't we talk about Age of Ultron?
Oh yeah, the
Not,
the sort of ending of Age of
yeah,
Ultron
Age of Ultron.
was a bit of a disaster, um, especially from Tony's point of view, sort of
Yeah,
overall. So obviously, Ultron is made to be the savior and ends up deciding to destroy the world
yeah.
and succeeds in destroying a large chunk of the is it the nation of Sokovia.
Sokovia, yeah, yeah,
So yeah, that's pretty devastating for a lot of people when he lifts the whole sort of like ground into the air and it drops
yeah.
down. Um, they managed to save it
Mm,
and limit the damage, but it's obviously quite a sort of like big disaster
yeah.
overall, and yeah, it's not a good look really for the Avengers as an
Mm,
organization, and I think
absolutely.
people are starting to get a bit wary of the
Yeah,
power level and the responsibility
yeah.
that comes with that.
What I thought the I mean, Age of Ultron's got one of my favorite lines. So do you remember at the very, very end where you've got the last the last ro I suppose machine that Ultron inhabits.
Mm,
Uh, and Vision finds him, he's trying to crawl away from Sokovia, and they're having a conversation, and Ultron's like to to no Vision says to Ultron like I think isn't beautiful because it's perfect essentially it's the imperfection that makes it beautiful and Ultron's like oh you're so naive
mm.
and Ultron's and then Vision said to him well I was born yesterday.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I love that line and it made me think I remember there was a line in a song that I heard which I related to it he said if um what's the line? I forgot it now. If something is misery, no, if I can't remember the line. I'm sorry, but it's basically saying if you know lots of things, then you're unhappy, and he's like that explains my misery, and it does make
mm,
me wonder, um, like in terms of coaching people and helping people trying to live their best life and stuff. I think cynicism is a big barrier of that, and the ability to look at a situation may I don't know whether naively or like a child almost. I mean, there's a bit of Bible we could talk about. The Bible says, to enter the kingdom of God like a child. Maybe it's that kind of childlike naivety of, oh wow, discovering new things every day and everything being exciting. There's a beauty to that and a lightness
yeah.
that kind of propels you forward because I think cynicism is a weight that makes it harder for you to get where you get to. What do you think about that as a concept?
Yeah, I like that, and it's one of the one things that Vision does that makes me like him. Because
Yeah,
other than that, I'm not really that keen on
big
him
fan
as
of
a
Asia.
character. No.
The line is, "If ignorance is bliss, that explains my misery."
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Um, so yeah, it's this whole the way that you view the world in terms of
yeah,
like viewing it as like a positive from a positive aspect where there's lots of different possibilities of what could happen, and it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
this optimism, glass half full.
yeah,
Whereas, when you're going into like cynicism and negativity as a
yeah,
result usually of experience and of
yeah,
the fact
exactly.
that we tend to remember we're biased towards negativity,
Yeah, yeah,
by nature. You're remembering all of the negative experiences, and then you get trapped in this cycle of not being able to have like a positive outlook because you're always
yeah,
thinking the worst is going to happen. You end up creating the worst because you don't have
exactly,
the
exactly.
the energy to.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, Vision coming in and just being like, yeah, I'm naive, and
yeah, exactly. Well, I
you
was
know,
born yesterday. That's a fantastic line.
but it's
Yeah.
also like cool because he's like all standing and pristine and about to walk away into his new life, and Ultron's, it's over for
Old and
him.
weathered. Yeah,
He's he's
exactly.
he's
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
broken and dead.
But and I think the thing that I have learned and the thing that I try and help people understand is that because in terms of the good, bad, if you want to talk about it in black and white, all of that is a choice about what to focus on because there's good and bad in every situation because it's the law of polarity, you
Mm.
know. My mentor was like, have you ever seen a one-sided piece of bread or a one-sided piece of paper? No, because everything has, two sides. So, and his thesis was as positive as something is as negative as it is. So there's both things. Now, I can choose to focus on the positive, or I can choose to focus on the negative. And like you say, I think humanity, we are negatively biased. So
Yeah,
I have to work at changing my focus to positive. But if I do that, like what a world we could live in.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
But yeah,
And
so
it's
Civil War,
Civil
Civil
War.
War.
Okay, let's get into this.
Let's get into it. Into it. So it is. We talked about this off recording. This is probably in the top five of MCU films for me. Civil War, probably top three if I'm honest. Top four, top three. Top four.
It's
I
up
think
there.
it's an absolutely fantastic film. I think the Russo brothers. I think it's a great film. I think it's the storyline is thick and heavy. Every minute there's something that makes you want to watch more. And I think the themes that they deal with in terms of like there's lots of issues with like trust and team working, and even the Captain America and Black Widow relationship at the beginning is very interesting in that regard. But yeah, so no, I think it's a great film.
Yeah,
I love it. And in terms of the themes, I think there are in it. I think trust is a really big thing, and how to deal with power and one's own power, because obviously we're dealing with superpowered individuals,
mm.
whether chemically or physically. So having a conversation about um, how to deal with power, I think is where we're at. How
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah, I love it. I love all the different characters in it and how everyone is coming together to form these two different sides,
Yeah,
this polarity and this antagonism. And I like the fact that it's not like there's like good and evil. There's just two
yeah,
different sides. Like there isn't really there's Zemo, who's like the villain, but he's not really the villain.
yeah.
He's just
His,
kind of
all,
like,
all his family was killed. What would you do?
yeah, yeah. He's just kind of there, doing stuff. But
Mhm.
but yeah, I think it throws up some really interesting themes about, the being responsible for the power you have, and
Yes.
who that responsibility lies with.
Yeah.
And also, you know, I really like the way it shows Tony in terms of his ego again coming into things, and also the emotional intelligence that is a bit of an issue at the end of the movie when he finds out about his parents and the way he just goes after Bucky, and
Yeah.
that it becomes like more about his own personal vendetta than anything to do with, the actual reason that they're going against each other in the first
Yeah. Yeah.
place. So yeah, this is just a few of my personal interests from the summary of the movie.
Yeah. 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 So in terms of like coaching and Tony Stark, we thought we thought one of the themes of the podcast could be if Tony Stark came to us in this part of his life for a coach, what question would he ask? So I think he would be wrestling with um being in a situation where his team is disintegrating, you know, and because even in the conversation in the airport where he's talking to Cap, he's almost begging him,
Yeah,
please come in because it's us. He can see he's conflicted, and it may be the first time because I think even so in the Avengers there was an anger and a grit at Loki, but I think he believed that they could win that war. He doesn't believe necessarily that he can, with brute force, beat Cap.
yeah,
So this is not a situation that they can just punch their way out of. They really have to do some negotiating. So I think um, if Tony was coming to you, I think the question he'd be asking you, Dr. Thomas, life coach, would be, how do I get the team back together?
I guess it's the thing. The real question is, how do I get the team back together without compromising my position? Because
Okay, yeah, okay,
this is the main issue, is that they have differing perspectives, different opinions, and the only way to get the team back together is if everyone agrees on a common goal, a common idea,
yeah,
something that they can fight for. You know how in the first Avengers, Agent Coulson dies and
yeah, yeah,
Nick Fury rallies them behind that. They need something like that again to happen.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but barring that, Tony as an individual, he's I think he's so deep in his kind of blame and regret from the events of Age of Ultron
Yeah.
that he can't budge. He's like, what
Yeah.
what can I do here? Like, all of this horrendous stuff has happened because
Yeah.
of me. Like, I can't budge my position. I need to try and convince him. So, again, looking at it from Captain America's side, not as a coach here. This is my personal opinion I'm giving, because I would be on Cap's side. So
Right. Yeah.
let
Me.
let let's
Mhm.
let's just say, if he did come to me as a coach, I would be like, I'm going to refer you to Dr. Ayo
Another
Olatoye,
coach.
because I'm not on your side. Like, I can't be impartial here. Captain America, you know, he if you had to choose between trusting Captain America and trusting the government, who would you choose?
Oh yeah. Yeah. 100%.
So this is why I'm just like, he has such a good point in that governments have their own agendas,
Agendas. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Definitely.
he doesn't want to be put in a situation where he's going to have to do something that he doesn't agree with, and
Yeah,
because he knows his morals are like
yeah.
really good, it makes a lot of sense, and I personally agree with that. So so yeah, I've kind of gone off this sort of coaching tangent here,
You feel
but
strongly
that's
about
just how strongly I feel
yeah, yeah, yeah,
about.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
I think the interesting we were just having this conversation at lunch. Like, I think that um part of life is understanding being a person of authority, sometimes under authority, and the way that that interaction happens. So let's say we're talking about work. We have people who are resident doctors who have training and have responsibility, but they have a different level of training or a different level of responsibility as a fully trained GP or a consultant. So we're respectful of each other as human beings, but our experiences aren't equivalent and our responsibility is not equivalent. So there has to be a way for a resident doctor to be able to navigate their learning and their interactions and their patient care, understanding that somebody else is responsible, and it has ultimate responsibility in terms of like um vicarious responsibility in terms of the take. And I think sometimes that's a difficult thing for people because we've never really been taught that or had that modeled in front of us because some of us we forget that being idealistic is a different thing than how to that than what is that different thing? Oh, it's not the only thing to consider when you're making choices, if that makes sense. So in a situation where, there's different people in different teams and somebody is either equivalent to you in terms of leadership or in a higher position than you, that person's opinion, you have to weigh that. You can't just be like, oh, well, I just think this and I just think that, and just be the loudest person in the room because you're not the final decision maker. And there is almost everybody has a boss and everybody has someone that they have to answer to. So I think that's a skill to learn. You mentioned about emotional intelligence, putting yourself in a position to say, well, this is how I feel, and this is what I feel strongly about. Now, I am not a slave. So if there's something that I really feel strongly about and you're telling me to do it and I don't feel like it's the right thing to do, I have the ability to vocalize what I am not going to partake in this because of X, Y, and Z. But there is a way to do that when I'm speaking to somebody who has responsibilities. Am I making sense? And I think sometimes
yeah,
from an emotional intelligence point of view, sometimes we get so bogged down by our rightness or their wrongness that we forget that I can create an environment that's not helpful from a team working point of view because of the way that I have communicated, whether I am right or
hmm
wrong.
hmm
And I think that, maybe Tony and possibly Cap in a situation are having difficulty communicating their position. They don't agree, but we don't always have to agree in a team. How do we move forward, understanding that hold a certain view, you hold a different, how can we
yeah. I think
still
it's
be a team?
very black and white though, isn't it? Like from either side, there isn't any compromise. There is never like
Yeah.
a an alternative option that both parties can agree to. It's just
Yeah.
like either you sign them or you don't.
Yeah.
And I think like being presented with that kind of one or the other
Yeah.
is not kind of conducive to having a an amicable discussion,
Yeah.
because it's just kind of it doesn't really take into account both sides. It's just like this is the side that's right. This is what you have to do. And Tony, I think, is so conflicted and struggling so much because I think deep down he agrees with Captain America and can understand his point of view.
And he admires Cap.
Yeah, but he can't budge. He's not in a position to budge because he's so he's been so wrong, like too many consecutive times
Yeah,
that he
yeah, yeah.
can't afford to be on the wrong side again.
Yeah,
So even if the Accords end up being wrong and there ends up being a situation that the government, is doing some nefarious activity with them, at least from Tony's perspective, it looks like he's the good guy, like
because he
he's
was just
doing the
going along
right
with.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So if I was coaching Tony, that is what I would try and get him to realize, that
Okay.
he's so focused on the external perception of him and his character that he's completely ignoring the internal values that he has, which he's demonstrated
Yeah.
throughout the rest of
Exactly.
the
Of
history.
all of them, you would have expected it to be the other way around. Cap
Yeah,
is a soldier, follows instructions, and then Tony's a maverick who doesn't do anything that anybody tells him to do. So, like, why are they? It's a very interesting, dynamic in the film. No, but I agree with you. I agree with you.
but
I
that
think
but
it's
that's what my advice, my coaching would be to him,
yeah,
which I would say, listen, I don't agree with you because I'm on Cap's side,
yeah,
but this is like some advice outside
yeah,
of the space of coaching. This is just
yeah,
one
yeah.
person to another kind of
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. Have you considered whether you're maybe just so concerned about your past? I mean, and this is a coaching conversation. Sometimes we entrench in our positions because I can't be wrong again. I
Mm,
just and fear of failure falls into this bracket and stuff like that. We make decisions all of this stuff, fear of failure, fear of success and stuff, is often rooted in our concern about how we look to other people. That's why people don't want to put their head above the parapet. What if I get it wrong? What if
it's a
I do
risk.
this? And but you're probably going to get something wrong in your life, so you might as well just get through the wrongs.
Yeah,
You get through to the rights. And I think you're right that Tony, if I was coaching him, that would be my conversation as well. Like, do you really, is this your honest opinion, or are you just feeling bad about the fact that, um, just like Cap said, somebody died while you were trying to do something good? Now you have to deal with that emotionally. You do, you do. But it's akin to medicine. We've had conversations on the ward round where I am talking to my resident doctors on the ward round and saying, we all are aware of that, that 1 in a million case, or that 1 in 1,000 case where it looked like a duck, swam like a duck, quacked like a duck, but it was actually a fish. And someone's made a diagnosis, and because I don't believe people go into these situations just like the Avengers with nefarious intentions. They went in to help. People come to work in hospitals and GP practices to help, and something bad happens. And then you as a person have to reconcile, am I going to change everything about myself because something negative happened?
mm,
Am I going to now make every case I look at am I going to look through it through the lens of the exception to the rule? Or am I going to have the courage to say, what can I learn from this
mm-hmm.
so it doesn't happen again? And let me keep walking. And I think it's a big conversation, and obviously in healthcare, because when bad things happen, sometimes people can die or have really significant morbidity. But I think it's a big conversation in life.
Yeah,
We all are going to make mistakes. So we going to allow ourselves to be defined by our mistakes? Or are we going to have the courage to say, I made a mistake, I can learn from it, but I'm not going to allow it to change who I am at my core,
yeah.
and keep moving forward.
I think it's really scary to say that, to admit I made a mistake.
Mm.
And the the fear is basically again coming back to the external perception. It's like I made a mistake, therefore everyone's gonna hate me and think
Yeah,
badly of me.
yeah,
Whereas the other perspective you can look at it is say, I made a mistake because I'm human, and as
mm,
humans, we make mistakes. Everyone does. It's just that this is my mistake, and I'm owning up to it, and I'm learning from it so that I can get better. Because we're all gonna make mistakes in life. That's just life goes,
yeah,
and you can either run from it and let it, you know, affect everything else that you do so that, in kind of medicine, we've all been in a situation where we made a mistake or got a complaint and gone into defense mode,
yeah, straight
and
away.
it completely changes like every decision that you make.
Yeah,
And that is not a good way to practice medicine. It's not in the best interests of the patients that you're trying to
exactly,
help, but
absolutely.
you've allowed one mistake or one complaint to dictate the service that all subsequent patients get. Whereas if
Exactly,
you are able
exactly.
to just kind of learn from it and
Yeah,
heal from it,
yes,
you can then maintain that sense of being able to think critically,
yeah,
and weigh up each decision. What is in the best interest of the patient
absolutely,
or the person I'm trying to serve,
absolutely.
not what's in my best interest
Yeah,
because it makes
yeah,
me look good, or because I'm not putting myself in a situation where
exactly.
I'm gonna, uh,
Yeah,
get criticized again.
exactly, exactly. My biggest issue with defensive medicine is that it's self-centered. It's only about, like I said, making sure I protect myself, and we forgot that our job is service. We came into this to be able to help other people, and that requires a certain amount of risk and exposure.
Yeah.
And I put my big boy pants on and keep going. So
And
let's talk about power. As soon as it's Sunday, um, so we talked about like um, regulations and um, internal regulations and external regulations. So what do you think about this phrase? Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. What do you think? I don't agree with it. Just put it out there. What do you think about that? I think it's from Animal Farm. Power
power
corrupts
corrupts.
and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Like I think power is always going to change people. It changes the relationships
Mm,
that we have with people. For instance, that's why people that are in positions of power can't date people, that they hold power
yeah,
over.
they
There's a
have
there's a
responsibilities
reason
over you.
for that,
Yeah,
because these power dynamics can change the way that people respond to you, and that can. I mean, this is it. This is for the majority of people. If you're not self-aware
yeah,
and careful about it, mindful, it can make you act differently, and it can make you stop treating people
yeah.
with the level of respect that
That
they
there,
deserve
yeah,
because you feel like
absolutely.
you're above them.
Yeah. I
What do you
remember,
think?
I remember watching. I think it was a Hollywood Reporter thing on YouTube, and there was a very well-known actor who I shan't name, and he said about, oh yeah, the best thing about being famous is that now you don't have to treat people nicely, that you don't have, that they don't do anything for you. I just thought it was such a horrible thing to say. That kind of, so fame, you could liken it to power. So because you're famous, or you have this power, now you can disregard people and
Mm,
forget the humanity of it. I just thought, my goodness, that's terrible. And it's akin to Tony Stark's character. His view of power and stuff is, okay, so this makes my life better. How can I make my life more better? And if you are not involved in the making of my life better, I can disregard you. Your opinion is not important. I don't have to treat you with any respect. I don't have to be kind to you. I know we're not talking about Cap. We are talking about the film. One of the reasons I'm with Cap is from an integrity point of view. So obviously,
yeah.
in the in the film Captain America: First Avenger, the way that they painted it is that the serum magnifies who you are on the inside. And Steve Rogers was a good man
Mm,
before he was a Superman, before he was a super soldier. And I personally think that's kind of the same thing with power. And if you want, with money, I don't agree with the phrase power corrupts because I just think it amplifies in the same way that money amplifies. I'm a Christian, so I don't believe power corrupt because God is absolutely powerful and He's absolute love. So it hasn't corrupted Him. So that's my opinion. But I think specifically in this film, the reason I would be on Cap's side is again what he showed me is that in most situations before there were intergalactic forces and stuff, he's a super soldier. So there's very few people that could stop him doing whatever he wanted, but he was able to use that to help humanity
mm,
rather than use that to further his own agenda, if that makes sense.
mm,
So it
mm.
amplified that good in him. So I don't believe that
Do
power
you,
corrupt.
do you believe that that most people are not 100% good?
Oh yeah, I think we're all. I think we're all shades of grey, and I think that it is. I think we are our human nature at its core is a bit selfish and self-centered, and would walk over other people if nobody else would see, and it didn't change the way that other people viewed me. I think we'd all be less nice. I think we'd all be less considerate.
Mm,
And if you were in a position where you had to consider other people's opinions less, I think that if you didn't work on that from a personal development point of view, that would be the thing that you projected in the world. Don't talk to me. You're not important. Get out of my way. I'm doing this. You know.
yeah.
And I think that's probably where we are at a base. I just think that again, with what I have learned about personal development, it's possible to address that
Hmm.
and grow in that area. So that's at the very least not my basement anymore. I can become an ethical, moral, um, service focused person rather than a self-centered, self aggrandizing, um, selfish
Yeah.
person.
I think it's almost like if you are saying that if you had like absolute power,
Yeah.
you um would never abuse it, would never do
Me?
anything.
Oh no,
No,
I
no, no.
definitely
I'm not
do.
saying you. I'm just saying if someone were to say that,
Yeah,
that in itself would almost be like a
a
red
red flag.
flag.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's because it's not very self-aware.
Aware, exactly, exactly, exactly.
And now Tony's side in Civil War, I can see, that's why it's such a good movie because
Yeah,
you can see both sides.
yeah.
He's basically saying like we have like this absolute power, like we're not what's the word?
We're not immune
Yeah,
from. Yeah,
we need someone to
yeah,
regulate that.
yeah,
We're not, good enough to control have maintain absolute control. Saying that would kind of be like arrogant.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like he's actually kind of being humble in saying that actually, yeah, we need someone sort of overseeing
yeah, 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 yeah,
this so we don't get carried away,
yeah,
which is
absolutely.
what has happened on several
Yes,
occasions.
yeah, yeah. I suppose well again is that's I agree. That's why it makes it such a good film, and I think what's one of the things that earlier Marvel films do very well. That even the people who are villains or whatever, you can kind of see where they're coming from. I fully understand what Tony is saying. I still think, if I were to drill it down, it might be a good thing said from a bad place, which to me equals not a good thing because you can do the right thing for the wrong reasons. I can give lots of money to the poor or to the charity, but if I'm just doing it as a tax break, it's not the same
Yeah.
thing giving it because I want to give, or doing it so that you can see. Like,
Mm,
the action is the same. I think where it comes from does matter. Last week we talked about the end doesn't justify the means. So I think Tony is still very much like, regardless of, I fully understand the need for, or the desire for oversight. I just think that, for him it's probably coming from, um, you know,
wanted to
not
look good.
necessarily a great place. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 man. Okay. Well, that is I think that like I feel like I've been like back and forth in terms of I'm on Cut's side, I'm on Tony's side. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think this is like the movie itself is also about I guess Cap and Bucky's relationship and you know I think that also plays a role in Tony as well, feeling
Okay.
like he's
He left out.
being sort of excluded
Yeah.
from that. And if Bucky wasn't in the picture, then maybe Cap would be on his side.
Yeah.
The reason I mentioned emotional intelligence is because of the scene at the end where
Mm.
Tony finds out that Bucky's killed his parents
Yeah.
and just loses it.
Yeah.
Like he's not interested in any like logic. You know, he was brainwashed. It's
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
his fault.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
just like, I just want to kill you. Like I don't even want to be like. I don't want to hear anything that makes any sort of
Yeah.
sense right now,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's something called like emotional hijacking.
Yeah.
Emotional
Yeah.
part of his brain is basically taken over and just
Yeah.
gone for it.
Do you think there's a bit of guilt in Tony?
Uh,
So maybe not for his
Guilt.
mum, but he didn't have a great relationship with his dad. And I think that he is at the very least aware enough, because we talked about like the bath technology and that thing that he did projecting the last time he saw them alive. He has probably had some time in his quiet time when he's like, there is a degree to which the difficult relationship I had with my dad, I contributed to. It wasn't all him, you know?
Mm,
And now to find out that, um, okay, now I'm in the same room as the guy, at the very least, as the body who killed my parents. It wasn't him because he was brainwashed or whatever. And sometimes when there's this kind of overreaction, sometimes it's guilt. I'm not saying, I mean, I wonder whether it's guilt. I wonder, you know, um,
yeah, I
because
mean, I don't think.
not all of it, but I think it might be contributing to his decision making.
Yeah, I guess if it was guilt, it's not like because they had a bad relationship that wasn't like the reason that he ended up getting murdered.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's the only thing that like
Yeah, fair enough.
I can't really understand
Reconcile it.
where the guilt
Yeah.
would come into it.
Well,
Oh,
because for me, it's because obviously his dad's gone. He can't. He's now probably in a position where he's like, if my dad was here, there were conversations that I would be emotionally, mature enough now to have, that I
mm,
could have had while they were alive, and you took them away.
yeah.
Maybe guilt is the wrong word, but yeah, sometimes we overreact because of, um, guilt. And again, rather than sit with the fact that, okay, well, I contributed to it, it's easier to project out and say, you did this to me,
Mm,
you
mm.
know?
I think it's a lot of like angst that has been
Yeah.
bubbling up
Yeah,
for
exactly. Exactly.
years, and then it's
Yeah.
just kind of like let loose,
Yeah. Yeah.
and completely overwhelms any kind of
Yeah.
rational,
Yeah.
thought. Uh, so I think in those kind of situations in real life, the only way that you can overcome them is by preparing for them beforehand.
Yeah.
So you don't prepare for the exact situation, obviously,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you prepare your kind of emotional regulation
Yeah.
through various activities like
And I also
meditation.
think that, Tony is a poster boy for should have gone to therapy. Because like these difficult emotions that we all go through. There are all relationships that we have that sometimes are challenging and stuff. I don't know whether I said it on the podcast before, but I saw a meme. Difficult emotions are like farts. So if you suppress them, they're only going to come out at another time when it's less convenient for you, So what would have happened if Tony had had the time to sit with somebody and really unpick his relationship with his parents and
Mm,
unburden himself, who knows what that situation Zemo wouldn't have been able to manipulate him in that way because obviously Zemo wasn't trying to win, he was just trying to divide
yeah, yeah,
um, and conquer, and he was able to do that because again, what was his line? I have patience. He was able to study
that
the
was a long
personalities,
plan.
and play them off against each other because things hadn't been resolved. There were things that weren't said.
Right. Just looking at the time.
Yeah, we've
Shall
we've
we
got this one to death.
wrap it up?
Do you have any last words? Anything?
No, I really love the movie. Like, in terms of like the philosophy of both different sides, the arguments, and yeah, just two really interesting characters which I can relate to a lot.
Yeah,
Two different leaders, two different styles,
yeah,
um, and um, and yeah, I think we've discussed a lot already.
yeah,
Learned a lot about kind of emotional regulation and optimism in terms of handling mistakes. So those are my two kind of key things really.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think for me, like you say, it's a film about power and how one relates to power internally and in other people, and ultimately, the situation only got the way it got because there were things that were unresolved. And I think that putting ourselves in a position where you have these conversations really help. I'm trying to look. Um, we Iron Man is not in Winter Soldier, is he?
No,
He's not. Okay.
I think so.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't have anything else to add other than that. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I really
if
enjoyed
you're
that.
watching on YouTube, we would implore you to like and share and subscribe, and tell all your friends about it because that's how we help the algorithm know that people are actually watching. Until we see you next time, I've been Dr. Ayo Olatoye.
And I've been Dr. Lewis Thomas.